Our planet generates an incredible amount of extraordinary phenomenon. Some we take for granted, even if they are a little difficult to predict. Others occur to us as nothing short of miraculous. Often, these are events in places seldom seen by people. They are rare, mysterious, and many seem outright impossible. This series encapsulates the remarkable with the exceptional. Is seeing really believing? With the help of leading scientists, fact will be separated from fiction. Join us as we are blown away by stupefying geysers in the US and Iceland. Marvel at New Zealand's spectacular Pancake rocks and blowholes. And hop on to Christmas Island to observe a colorful migration like no other on Earth. It is a journey taken with eyes wide open. Welcome to Impossible Planet. They are a rare phenomenon, existing only thanks to an intricate and specific set of plumbing, naturally created deep within the ground. They are the culmination of a coincidence of unusual conditions. Their study has led to medical breakthroughs. Yet to this day, centuries after their discovery, they are still enthralling scientists.
They seem to almost defy logic, these blisters on the surface of the Earth's crust.
These are geysers. Mystical geological structures that are both fascinating and ferocious. Capable of shooting over 8,000 gallons of boiling water, 145 feet into the air. And sometimes with little to no warning. Yet their numbers are limited.
The Geysir region is one of the few places in Iceland where you have these erupting geysers. You have these places around the world, but they're not common.
Two of the rare places geysers are found is the Geysir geothermal area in Iceland and Yellowstone National Park in America. George Karunis has dedicated his life to visiting awe-inspiring phenomena around the world and knows of the delicate balance nature must strike to allow these erupting hot springs to exist.
There's three main ingredients for geysers to form. You have to have an underground heat source, so magma, a chamber of magma, typically deep below the Earth's surface, but close enough to the surface that it can interact with the second element, that is groundwater. That's the typical groundwater that you would find if you were to dig for a well. When that water interacts with the hot rock that's been heated by that magma, it wants to expand and head up towards the surface. But of course, it has to go somehow through that crust, and it's the plumbing underneath, the porous rock, the reservoirs, the chambers, the channels of cracks and fissures in the Earth's crust that create the channel for that geyser to form.
The The Geysir geothermal field in Iceland is one such place. The area has an abundance of hot springs and several geysers, including the famous Great Geyser and Strókr, which erupts approximately every 5 to 10 minutes. The geysers and hot springs run in the same direction as the tectonic lines, the cracks in the Earth's surface allowing water to enter deep underground.
There's a conduit that goes usually maybe 10, 15, 20 meters into the ground. If you have hot water that's heating up in the geyser, in the deeper regions, and when it's heated, it expands. And the only way for the mix of steam and water is to rise faster and faster up through the conduit, and we get an eruption. And the conduit is then partly emptied, and the eruption is over. And then the same process happens again.
While the existence of geysers is contingent on extreme heat within the Earth, the conditions under which they are created are quite specific. Often it's thanks to the presence of magma. But this doesn't necessarily mean they exist in harmony with active volcanoes. Magnus Tumi Gudmundsson is a professor of geophysics based in Iceland.
What seems to be needed is a reasonable amount of stability, so these channels and conduits can form near the volcanoes. They don't seem to find these type of erupting geysers. The water is not clean enough.
Similarly, other natural phenomena like earthquakes can play havoc with their eruptions.
Earthquakes certainly can disrupt the plumbing beneath the ground and destroy geysers. You can have instances of mineral deposits choking off some of the conduits where the hot water passes through. So there are naturally occurring events that can make geysers stop erupting.
Nowhere is this more noted than with the grandfather of all geysers. Aptly named the Great Geyser, it is claimed to be the first known to modern Europeans. Its violent power noted in the 13th century. Years can go by between eruptions, and the activity is thought to be related to the frequency of earthquakes on the areas surrounding it.
So the old geyser, it started to erupt again. There were earthquakes in the year 2000. Then it started to erupt again, probably because there were movement on fissures in the area, and that meant that there was more hot water reaching the geyser, so it actually started to erupt again.
Its eruption in 2000 was so powerful. It's one of the largest known geyser blasts of all time, reaching a whopping 400 feet. It is unknown exactly when the Great Geyser may erupt next. Luckily for visitors, the reliable Strókr sits alongside, frequently shooting boiling water 15 to 20 meters into the air, and has been known to reach heights of 40 meters. Fittingly, Iceland has harnessed the power of its molten ground to create energy.
A geothermal area is where there is more heat coming from the ground and the surroundings. And why is that? That's because underneath there is what's called a reservoir. The rocks are saturated with hot water and steam. And these come in various shapes and sizes, the manifestation on the surface. That's where also we have some of the geothermal power stations and harness geothermal heat for our swimming pools and heat our houses.
The use of this energy, utilized also in countries like New Zealand and Russia, can lead to the decay of nearby geysers, however.
These power plants pull some of the heat out of the ground, so the magma chamber doesn't have the effect that it used to have on the water table, and they can actually drop the level of the water underground as well. So it is possible for humans to kill off geysers.
The lifespan of geysers has also been shortened over the years as they were used for washing clothes, as repositories for rubbish, and by being filled with soap in order to create a bubbly eruption. Derived from the Old Norse word geyser, meaning to gush or rush forth, geyser is in fact an eponym, and has now lent its name to all others of its kind around the world. One such place is in Yellowstone National Park. Attracting over 4 million visitors each year, it was gazetted as the world's first national park in 1872. Its abundance of geysers being noted as a reason for its preservation.
Yellowstone is home to the most geysers in the world and some of the biggest ones on planet Earth as well. There's evidence of up to 1,200 having erupted there, and at any given time there are over 400 that are active that you can go and see at Yellowstone.
So what is heating the water below ground here that creates such a concentration of geysers?
It's a supervolcano. It's one of the rare volcanoes on planet Earth that has the ability, if it were to erupt today, to wipe out life as we know it.
Located in the northwest corner of North America, Yellowstone is so vast that its boundaries traverse state lines, branching out across Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho.
At first glance, you wouldn't really understand that Yellowstone is a volcano because it's so incredibly huge. The crater or caldera of the volcano itself is so big that you have to get into your car and drive for about an hour or two to get to the other side. It's so massive.
Yellowstone is in fact situated directly over not one, but 2 reservoirs of molten hot magma. The first shallower reservoir is composed of rhyolite and stretches from 5 kilometers to 17 kilometers beneath the surface of the Earth, and is a whopping 90 kilometers long and 40 kilometers wide. The second deeper chamber starts at 20 kilometers beneath the surface and runs 50 kilometers into the center of the Earth. Unsurprisingly, the temperatures down there reach between 1,300 and 2,400 degrees Fahrenheit. This intense underground heat has in fact created one of the most famous geysers. Old Faithful currently erupts around 17 times per day, with an average of 60 to 110-minute interval between eruptions.
You could almost set your watch to them, but there's still a lot that we don't understand. Seeing what's underground, seeing the plumbing, seeing the interaction between that hot rock and the water is something that you can't just cut the earth open and get a good look at.
Outside of Yellowstone and Iceland, the last remaining deposits of geysers can be found in only a few other places on Earth. In the Topo volcanic zone in New Zealand, the aptly named Valley of Geysers in Russia, and El Tatio in Chile. Each of these geysers, no matter how old or their geographical location, display a vivid hue of varied colors, a giveaway of the surprise they hide within their bubbling waters.
Some of those colors are caused by mineral deposits that are left behind by evaporating water, but some of them are caused by colonies of extremophile bacteria, living microscopic organisms that thrive in these incredibly hot conditions.
Not only are they beautiful to look at, but the study of these extremophiles has paved the way for many important scientific breakthroughs. Their discovery has led to the creation of a range of groundbreaking medical applications, all of which utilize their ability to survive in extreme heat, including medical diagnostics and the forensic analysis of DNA. The study of these thermophiles even has reaches far beyond planet Earth.
There are extreme conditions that exist on planets far away, within our solar system and even beyond. And the more we can learn about these bacteria that thrive in these extreme places, the more clues we learn about where we should look for life on other planets.
An insight into the future and the activities of the Earth's core. These boiling pits of bubbling water are fierce and captivating. Incredibly rare yet powerful phenomena, geysers have proven themselves to be invaluable to furthering our understanding of life on this planet, and perhaps on others too.
There's so much going on down there. The volcanic systems that create these geysers are complex, they're ever-changing, and to witness that firsthand is to see the forces of nature that are at work below our feet, producing something that is grand, spectacular, and a little dangerous. We want to witness these things. We want to bring our kids to go and witness them, to show them how complicated our world is and how amazing it is, and hopefully learn a bit about how our planet works.
It's as though nature has dished up a slice of perfection. A sensational scene on which to feast your eyes on.
So it's just a magical intertwining of geology, ecology, coming together in a way that just moves you.
How did these form? How did these get like this? That's impossible.
On the west coast of New Zealand, hidden behind dense coastal rainforest, rich in ecology, is a geological wonder. These tall, dark stacks are known as the Pancake rocks, and it's not hard to figure out why.
It looks like a stack of, American-style pancakes, one on top of the other.
A lot of people will know this place as the Pancake Rocks, but this is actually called Punakaiki. So Punakaiki is the name of this place and of the rocks themselves. Puna translates roughly to puna, a spring, and kaiki, which is heaps or layers. So as the name suggests, a spring of layers.
The Pancake rocks of Punakaiki and the blowholes surrounding are one of the most popular natural attractions in New Zealand's South Island.
It's just really easy to be taken in by the entire raw nature of the area. It's not everywhere where you can go within moments of the road, just be totally lost in nature.
Marine settings.
It's made up of calcium carbonate. And that comes from all the shells of sea creatures. Most of the shells of things you can think of that live in the ocean are calcium carbonate. So when all those critters die, they sink to the bottom and they just make up layers and layers of this calcium carbonate. It would start like an ooze on the seafloor, and eventually, as it gets compressed by more layers above it, it would turn into a rock that we call limestone.
The ocean that we had here was super, super rich. So this limestone is actually a lot stronger than a lot of the other limestones around the world.
Pancake rock in New Zealand would have been a submarine limestone when it formed. So calcium carbonate has a very interesting property that when you start to compress it, various grains start to dissolve and reconfigure. So you end up with these very wiggly, irregular lines all through it. That's something called a stylolite, and it comes from just compressing a limestone. You'll have seen those on any kitchen bench top, all the floor tiles. We often use limestone in all these places.
The limestone of Pancake Rock started forming millions of years ago on the bottom of the ocean floor. Tectonic plate movement resulted in a huge uplift event that pushed the limestone above sea level.
We find marine rocks at the surface all over the planet, including at the top of Mount Everest. They're marine rocks that have been uplifted. So anywhere you see limestones, they're synonymous with coral reefs. Those rocks, they're parts of the seafloor that are now above water level.
The uplift occurred 25 million years ago. But the Pancake Rocks have only been this visible above sea level for about 100,000 years.
Another major lift event basically brings it all back up to the surface. Then a lot of all the dirt, soil has just been washed away by the waves as it's been waving up. These rocks that you're looking at the top, this is really only the past 100,000 years. So it's quite special that we're here at this time to see that process.
What makes the limestone of the Pancake Rocks unique to others are the very thin layers of mud or silt between each stylolite.
Those layers that you see that form the pancakes are actually extreme versions of these stylolites. So they've been really compressed. The mud has a very different strength to the limestone, so it moves a little bit. It's a bit more slippy. So when you have a whole stack of these layers of limestone and mud, the effect you see is that sort of extreme stylolite, and it looks like pancakes.
So this is a really good example of the Pancake Rocks themselves. So this is the rock that had been underwater for those 20 million years when, under the pressure, they're being forced into these layers by the connections happening on the microscopic level. With the really strong calcium carbonate, you got these stacks happening through. When the uplift happened, you had these layers exposed, and you've got these soft siltstone layers where the erosion from the rain and from the wind is just eating away at these soft layers, so that as it erodes, you just get the really emphasized pancake rocks.
Like many geological structures, Punakaki is a victim of extreme erosion. Exposure to elements from both the sea and the air are causing the rocks to slowly dissolve and break down.
The water does come really strong against the rock, and this is where you can see the smoothness of the low layers very harshly against the perfectly cut of the upper layers. So it's quite easy to see the difference between what has been happening from sea erosion and what's been more happening from the erosion from the air, from the rain.
Strong waves strip main matter from the rock's surface, leaving a sleek, glossy finish. While from the top, the air and wind is acting like a sandpaper, slowly eating away at the layers.
Things like pancake rocks are always eroding. Anytime there's rain, they will start to erode the limestone surface. It will start to dissolve it. You get lots of little pits in the surface of the limestone, and the pits eventually join up and make big fractures.
In some areas, the extent of the erosion is more apparent than others. These sea stacks have been slowly eaten away by the elements for a lot longer than the other rocks, and are completely smooth in areas, or have grooves and ridges.
We're lucky that erosion has what's created this really beautiful feature that we have, but if you look around, you also see a lot of the sea stacks are collapsing through. That will be a natural process. It does seem to be really accelerated with more extreme storms, ocean levels rising. A lot of it's just been eating away a lot more quicker than we would expect. The conditions which made it, unfortunately, would be the conditions that destroy it.
Down the bottom, some rocks are completely covered by water. An example of the true force of Mother Nature.
The sea's just going to eventually one day be claiming all of these rocks. You've got a stack that's standing on as a last bastion with all the rocks around it, which you can see are gone.
Alongside the pancake stacks of Punakaki are these spectacular blowholes. When the conditions are right, they pump huge amounts of ocean up into the air with immense force, speed, and sound. There are several blowholes in the area, the most famous being Putai. Here, the pancake rocks circle a massive bowl below, and the seawater sprays out to great heights.
So when it does come through the bottom, it splashes up and then just really opens out. So that's where you get the really beautiful rainbows, just because there's a real spread of the water coming through here, and it's just the perfect chamber for the light to come through.
Blowholes are most active in high tide, particularly after a storm or when there's a full moon. At Surge Pool, the Tasman Sea flows in through an archway and smashes against the flat side of rock with such pressure, it kicks back with great force.
So when the water's coming in here and the tide is high, it hits the back of this wall with nowhere to go and just slams over the top. We also have a tunnel down the bottom of this, and this does lead through to the Southern Sound.
Southern Sound is slightly further inland than the other blowholes. Its distinguishing feature is the eerie sounds that emanate from within.
The really cool thing about Southern Sound, where it's in, it becomes a reverberation chamber. So it's the sort of one where you can be kind of just walking past it, then suddenly it's this woo sort of noise, and you're like, oh, hey.
The chimney pot blowhole is also known to catch people off guard.
Chimney Pot is a quite deep cut valley through here, where the water goes in through the bottom, comes through a really tight passage, and it explodes, as the name suggests, just like a teapot. So Chimney Pot just blows straight at the top in this really nice jet. It's also one of the best places to get soaked if you are looking to really take in the full effect of the pancake rocks.
As wondrous as this serving of pancake geology is, its lifespan is ultimately limited. the incredible recipe of raw elements that hound the coastline, will eventually result in the destruction of the Pancake rocks.
Nothing in the geological world lasts forever. It's all destined to be eroded and redeposited somewhere else.
Whether you're into the geology, the ecology, or if you just know nothing about science and you just love stuff that looks beautiful, it's all here.
It's a seething, swarming mass of action. A shoreline painted red by a migration so epic that it brings an entire island to a standstill. It's meticulously timed, yet hard to predict. It happens every year, but part of it remains shrouded in secrecy and the unknown. And it's the only place on Earth where it takes place. This is the red crab migration. Geysir natalis, or the Christmas Island red crab, is found exclusively on Christmas Island, a 52-square-mile island off the coast of Indonesia. Estimates vary, but for a few weeks every year, approximately 40 to 50 million crabs of varying sizes rule this landmass. As adults, marching seaward, and as new babies, heading back to shelter. Almost everywhere you look, red crabs take over the island. Chris Bray is a wildlife photographer who lives on the island. He has witnessed this red ramble many times.
When they're migrating, they just cover the whole roads everywhere. It's hard to even walk around or cycle around. It's really tricky. Of course, the cars have to stop. National parks close a lot of the roads, which makes it a little bit harder to get around the island. You've got to be a bit more patient. But tourists love it, you know, getting out in front of the car and having to rake the crabs out of the way so you can safely drive in.
The main adult migration can last up to 18 days, bringing the island to a halt as streams of crabs climb down cliffs, cross roads, and any other obstacles in their path. The event is so large, locals have developed ways to keep the crabs safe as they march towards the coast. So why is there such an epic, all-consuming migration? Where are these crabs going, and why? The answer is twofold, but the first clue is evolutionary.
I guess when most people think about crabs, they think of ocean crabs running around in the rock pools. These are different. These are land crabs, so they live their whole life in the forest, in burrows actually in the soil, and they pop out to eat leaves and things like that. But once a year, they still have to go back to the coast to spawn. So they're a unique kind of blend. They have to spend most of their life in the forest, but they still have to return to the sea.
It is this evolutionary throwback that is the catalyst for the tumultuous and yet sometimes risky expedition. The adult's ancestral urge to return to the rocky shores of the island to mate and release their larvae exposes them to long periods in the baking heat. The sun's rays putting them at risk of dehydration during their 9-kilometer voyage to the ocean. To better their chances at surviving this journey, the weather must be cool and moist. Herein lies the second clue to the cause of their migration.
So the whole epic event is kicked off by the rain, and we don't really know when the rain is going to come each year. So it's hard to predict.
The crabs don't know either. But when it does happen, they are ready and emerge from their inland burrows in the millions.
When the rainy season starts, typically around October, November, the relative humidity goes up and the first rainfalls start. This triggers in them the urge to migrate to the coast for breeding. The crabs will emerge after the first serious rainfall, and if the humidity stays above 85%, then they'll start marching down towards the coast.
The timing of this journey is meticulous and seemingly well organized, yet changes every year.
They'll actually stop the migration if humidity drops, because it gets too dry and they don't really want to be walking around in the sunshine. So they'll take shelter until either more rain comes or the humidity rises again.
Once they reach the ocean, the males will dig mating burrows, which will then house the females for between 12 and 13 days, while their eggs develop. In yet another evolutionary throwback, once they're developed, the crabs must release their eggs into the ocean. But not just any ocean. It must be at the tide brought on by the last lunar quarter. How could they possibly plan this so flawlessly, allowing for exactly the right amount of time between their mating and the high tide of the last quarter of the moon? Much of it has to do with the time the crabs take to reach the shore in the first place.
They seem to have an idea of how long they've got before the next tidal cycle that they need. So they'll either rush down to the beach or take a leisurely walk.
Studies undertaken in the 90s found that the rainfall arrived 3 weeks earlier in 1995 than it had done a few years earlier. Using tracking devices, it was shown that in order to make up for the 3-week difference, in 1993 the crabs had sped up their journey to the ocean. Having significantly less time, they took direct routes to the shoreline and walked further each day. In 1995, however, the tracking devices show they took more regular food breaks, took longer, more circuitous routes, and often stopped along the way. Once the females, safe in their sandy burrows, have allowed time for their eggs to develop. However, the process is always the same. And once again, it is dictated by the moon.
Just before dawn, all the females come out and clamber out onto these rocks and just cover the whole coastline red. And then just at the right time of the tide, they all run out and cast their eggs into the sea, do a bit of a dance and shake all the eggs out.
In an awesome shimmy, The female crab releases tens of thousands of eggs into the water. Vibrating and shaking her body, the epic dance moves empty the pouch. But it's a risky business. The excursion into the sea is yet another high-stakes move for these females. As land crabs, they can't survive underwater. If they lose grip during spawning and are washed out to sea, they will drown. So why do they risk their own lives? In yet another ancestral throwback, these soon-to-be babies need seawater first to hatch, and then to develop.
As soon as the eggs hit the seawater, they hatch and turn into these little megalope like plankton.
And the reason for this synchronicity amongst the mothers?
It's safety in numbers. Millions and millions and millions of eggs are being dropped into the sea at once, meaning that hopefully a greater number are able to survive and come back. So they release them on the outgoing tide as the current's taken them out, away from the beach. Nobody knows exactly where the larvae end up. Once they've done the initial dispersal off the coast, they swim down into deeper water. They don't just sit at the surface. They go into deeper water to escape from predators such as the whale sharks and manta rays, which circle the island during the breeding season because of the sudden influx of small planktonic food. The way that their behavior has somehow managed to keep them within the island, and being such a small target in the middle of a very expansive ocean, it's quite amazing that that's actually happening.
After 3 to 4 weeks at sea, they are, in theory, big enough to return to the island. Being such tiny crabs floating in a huge ocean, they are about to face their first and possibly hardest challenge.
If they're lucky, if the ocean currents go the right way, they drift back to the island. If the currents are bad, sometimes the babies just never come back to the island.
The years they do return, however, the shores are once again awash in a sea of red as these tiny, determined crustaceans begin the long journey back to the cool shades of the forest to join the rest of their family, if they can make it. The crablings are often only 5 millimeters across, their size ensuring they are no less vulnerable on land than at sea. As they slowly make their journey inland, they are still at the mercy of other, larger threats. Including their own kind. It's also a matter of negotiating the terrain, climbing over, under, around, and through any obstructions in their path. Those who are fortunate enough to evade the pincers of the larger crabs and overcome the obstacles continue their march, and about 9 days after they first set off, eventually disappear back into the forests of the island.
The key aspect of it is the small area that they have to come back to. It's not like a case of they get released on any part of the coast. They all seem to come back to the same spot. That level of retention is quite amazing.
Amongst the sanctuary of the rainforest floor, the crabs grow slowly and in solitude. They reach sexual maturity when they're about 40 millimeters in carapace width after 4 to 5 years. At which time they will once again make the journey back to the shore and begin the process again.
One morning you just wake up and the whole coastline can be red with crabs, like a living carpet. just flowing out onto the beaches and the rocks and making their way back up into the jungle. And there's nowhere else in the world where there's a migration of such huge numbers of crabs.
The fact that these crabs have somehow been able to maintain this population without just dispersing into the ocean breeze is no small feat.
It's a triumphant culmination of precision timing and a hard-fought battle with the elements. An epic journey like no other. The exceptional migration of the Christmas Island crabs truly is a natural wonder.